Hello, my name is Shauna. Welcome to my infrastructures presentation. I knew I wanted to begin with ideas of the London Underground and the Tube. I have a real thing about it. I'm really into the Tube and the Underground. It's become a bit kind of very associated with me. And I actually do enjoy making a lot of work about the Tube. On Fine Art, I do quite a bit of writing on there and quite a bit of work associated with it because it's the combination of how there are distinct systems and maps with colours, and I just think that's really entertaining and just makes a lot of sense to me. But I also have a lot of associations with the Tube as I've grown up in London. I've been on the Tube and trains and stuff since I was like tiny. So I have a lot of associations with different people on them, and yeah, it's a giant system, underground London, but also on top of London sometimes. And so I just wanted to look at that. I first started exploring the actual physical, or ideas of exploring the actual physical infrastructures of the Tube system, and displaying that using computational things such as LEDs to display movement, timings, comings and goings. I'm looking at the different, comparing lines even. I also debated maybe having something about drawing the person who's always opposite on me on the train, so it's a database of my personal journeys in an artistic way. But even when you go back and forth between any of the ideas that I was kind of flicking between, they all kind of surrounded this idea of databases, and I knew that was something I was going to bear in mind and keep with me. The idea that I ended up kind of looking at, but actually I'll reference this a bit, it's I also wanted to look at the maps specifically and the systems and how they've been displayed, because when those shapes are out of context, they're still very recognizable. The London Underground map as a graphic design invention was voted one of Britain's top 10 best inventions. That's up there with the internet. The London Underground map, and I wanted to see if out of context would people still be familiar, would they still be able to pick them out in a lineup by shape. But then I also went this way I ended up doing, which was exploring how associations between maps and personal relationships changed the weight of the London Underground map, recontextualizing the Tube with people, which meant moving the lines and looking only at the stations. I did look at the actual physical infrastructure as well, and the timings, which were the ideas I looked at before, just kind of gathering data. And what I also started doing was identifying how I could look at the different shapes of the individual lines, because I knew I was looking at the individual lines as well as the map as a whole. And I kind of found different ways to quantify them. So, for example, double forked would be a kind of separation on both ends of the line. But forked with root is forked, but then with lots of other little bits coming off of that. So it's more of like a root shape. Loop being bloody loop. Circle line, typical. But yeah. And then I also was quite intrigued by the idea of looking at the timings of Waterloo and City, because that ride is 3 minutes long and it goes from Waterloo to the city. And when going to rush hour, quite a lot of them is 3 minutes between each journey. So that means by the time it's gone and it comes back, the other one is swapped. So I like the idea of those trains swapping back and forth during rush hour, which I thought might be something I'd look at, but I didn't in the end. I started looking at other maps of the Underground, and these are some ones that really intrigued me. This is a map with all the tunnelling. The longest consecutive tunnel being between East Finchley, going all the way down via Bank. That is the longest consecutive tunnel in the London Underground, fun fact. And also this one, the pay-as-you-go map, which is kind of completely different colours and completely different system, but it's dependent on how much you pay. And this is for TfL workers. So there's the tunnel map. Then we've got something like this, which is a more artistic variation, but this is a collaboration Samsung did for the 90th anniversary of the Underground. Just kind of seeing how shapes change and really centering around a specific iconic shape on the map. Obviously, where the circle line is on the final map here, this shape has actually been trademarked by TfL. Also, I like this one. Walking times in between stations. That's so cute. There's another one that says the steps. I just thought that was really fun. So this is me continuing to go. I wanted to look at the idea of either Waterloo and City or Victoria lines, that being the two smallest of the lines, as you can see here, redoing them, looking at them, full tunnelling under the Victoria line, kind of, this is the minutes between. I wanted to start collating between. These are different tubes different maps I could start looking at. But I came to this question, and that would be, how can I explore and redraw the London Underground map, creating new lines in relation to associated interpersonal relationships? So I began starting to build a database, and this was actually before I settled on that question. This was me kind of going out of interest. What do people say? Just jotting it down in my notebook, seeing what's there. Hi, Murad. And that was the wording obviously I came to. These are the the lines I ended up creating. This is me exploring the shapes that I was going to draw for the maps, because it's actually quite hard to visualize sometimes. But yeah, one thing I will definitely have to say, well, this is how I gathered the data. I popped it on my Instagram story. I also bullied people in real life, but it got a little bit, I did have to clarify, because a lot of people started just sending me, for example, New Cross reminds me of you because you live in New Cross. Fair enough. I know people that live in lots of places, but I don't think of them every time I pass through. If I pass through, I might likely think of another time when I saw a friend for a drink there instead. You know what I mean? And that's what I wanted. I wanted more like heavy associations for maybe surprising reasons, or you're not sure why, but you always think of that person. That's what I wanted. And I also knew that I wasn't getting all the feedback I was going to, because people have exes. They have a lot of associations and a lot of nostalgia about their ex-partners that sometimes people think they're not allowed to indulge in. And I wanted to make it clear, that's completely fine. Tell me about when you think about your ex. I don't care if you don't talk to each other. That makes it better. Here's some of the data I received. But yeah, there we go. Quite a bit. It kind of kept coming, and I wasn't like really entirely prepared, but I also have messages and individual conversations with people. Oh, didn't realize that happened. This bad boy is my final Excel sheet that I have of gathered data. Name, station, relationship to them, which I've then color coordinated dependent on the line, and the kind of grouping, and then other details on the side there. I need to make it clear that the lines themselves very much followed the data. I was not trying to get data to fit the lines. I looked at the data, went through it, saw what's the most common, what was the least common. That's where I went from it. So, for example, distribution of station, the most common station that was mentioned was Camden Town, with 7 mentions. Next one was actually King's Cross, but as you can see, there's so many stations here that you can't completely see. Shot there. But yeah, it was very well spread out, which was expected. Every time I would take a new piece of data and it happened that someone had already said it, I did kind of go, yippee, this is so fun. And it got quite emotional sometimes for me. There are spaces where you would see, in here, like, for example, if you got any here, kind of like people, for example, here, Millie and Haytham both think that when they're going through King's Cross, they think of specific people to them. They're reminded of people that they love, and they both go through these stations. They could walk straight past each other because they don't know each other, but they both know me, and they're both busy thinking about people that they love, and I just love that. I love that so bad. And yeah, I just like gathering and trying to look at similarities. A lot of the findings and observations I kind of had were dependent on the individual lines. So, for example, beginning with the ex-girlfriend and ex-boyfriend lines, which there was a lot of exes. I did have to split them up. Originally, I was going to do ex's line and then a partner's line, just keep it nice and vague. But I had to divide it at some point. And what I was saying in terms of how the lines followed the data, there is obviously a lot of I liked seeing the pattern between the boyfriends and the girlfriends and how that data and the proportions of each of them really varied. I will note that because having a girlfriend and a boyfriend line does seem to exclude kind of gender ambiguity, that's not intentional. If I was told partner, I probably would have input that and had more of a gender neutral line in terms of partners, but I didn't. I just kind of folded data in this case. And yeah. This is the boyfriends. This is the girlfriends. That's there's a lot of ex-boyfriends, sure. Nice straight line there of ex-boyfriends. But more current boyfriends. Not that many, but there's some current boyfriends. There is near to none current girlfriends, but there is a lot of ex-girlfriends. And what I did for this one is I also included flings. So people, like one-night stands, like little flings people had. That was dotted line, which is notoriously occasional kind of running of that line. Tubes sometimes go there, so they're a fling, which I quite enjoyed. But yeah, any crossover I've done or multiple join up means there's more than one association with that station. So pretty consistently through the entire map, I tried to keep it like that. In some occasions, it was very difficult to actually join up stations across the map. But yeah, that's how I've done it. So Tufnell Park is an association with both an ex-girlfriend and a current girlfriend, and that's kind of how we sorted that out. The individual maps, I've mainly done northbound to southbound, otherwise west to east in terms of how to read them. Next would be the family line. So the family line with 36 stops, it had the line that had the most connections to international travels. We've got Heathrow, we've got King's Cross. There was lots of connections to King's Cross, unsurprising. And same with Euston for trains. It was a lot about saying hello to people, saying goodbye to people. There was a lot of really beautiful stories from this one. And yeah, it was the widest spread one geographically. It went out. And then, which was very expected. I wasn't expecting it to be strictly central or have it in a specific area because although obviously there's going to be some sort of skewed bias in the people I'm taking the data from, as they're people I know and I'm friends with, I was asking people, like, I don't know people specifically from one area. I grew up in northwest London. I currently live in southeast London. I have a lot of friends in west and in east separately. So I wasn't surprised that it spread a lot of wider areas because people from different places. But yeah, obviously as normal underground, circle means it's a connection to somewhere else. And this was a line that had a lot of only family lines. So I mean, it's people having interactions with just their family and not really associating with other places. Then we've got into the friendly lines. So this is the best friend line. Best friend line, it's obviously quite short. It's exclusive to be a best friend. Then we've got the friends line here, yellow friends, and then we've got uni friends, which people met through uni. 3 out of the 8 best friend stations were centered at Bond Street. And that was where I started to get a little bit tearing up sometimes. My mum submitted some data. She submitted data saying that she goes to Bond Street and she thinks of her best friend Barbara, who passed away last year, because they used to go to a cocktail bar together when Barbara would visit her in London. And it was right next to someone else that I met one night, probably in a cocktail bar actually, just randomly, swapped Instagrams, and he gets reminded of his best friends going through Bond Street. And I just thought, that's crazy. Like, it just became quite sentimental. It's just all the stories. I got quite sentimental about the whole thing. That's not even getting onto the whole other line, but yeah. A lot of centering around Tottenham Hale. That was at the end though, didn't have more connections. But yeah, that's kind of where we're at. This is the passed away line. Obviously as crosses over because the passed away line connects more with these more abstract ones, where these are ones that came afterwards. They're not explicit. These were observations I kind of made afterwards. So passed away line is for people that have since died and you still think of them when you go through the station. I just kind of like the idea. This kind of is more explicit on the idea of people leaving traces even after they're not with you. I just think it's very beautiful. And then obviously Bond Street is up there for my godmother. So yeah, I did cry going through Leighton recently. That was rough, but yeah, I just feel like I've soaked all these stories up now. More abstract. These are created afterwards. So this is the line of people that you don't talk to anymore, but you still think of them. And this is Strange Encounters. Both Euston and Bethnal Green were guys I know have met, like, musicians. I think that one was Noel Gallagher. That one was Matty Healy. This was about lovely strangers that people had conversations with, and actually they always think of that stranger when they go through, which is just sweet. These are the list of things that I didn't actually categorize and end up using. These tended to be people that were like a degree of separation away, or they weren't necessarily an actual, like, thing or a person or a specific station. I was going to do a 1 degree of separation line, but I thought that's too vague even for me. I would probably do it if I'm adding more later on. And for those who this is the double entries as well. So obviously these are the crossovers. I added the double into it so I could appropriately label and color-wise on my data. But yeah, these are the doubles. Multiple doubles on Baker Street, which was a popular station. And for those who obviously were caring so bad, these are the stations people associate with me. Yeah, there you go. Hope you enjoy that. This, of course, is the London Underground map. Design-wise, it was done very specifically at 45-degree angles. It's all soft. You don't use right angles. But it's all kind of smooth and spread out, bright colours, very clear to read. I wanted to have those things, as you can see. But the thing is, the London Underground map is not a geographical map. It's very vague. Things in West London are in West London. Things are in South London are in South London. But it's a vague map. So I wanted to kind of take some of that as well. I did keep some of the right angles because I wanted to be completely honest. That's where I was at. But I kept the flexibility as well. For example, East Finchley's probably a little lower than it actually is. But that's just worked better for my map, which is the same kind of things they bear in mind when they were doing the map originally. So I'm comfortable with that. But yeah, this is my final map that I created with all the lines. As you can see how widespread the family line is. You can see how kind of short. This is my equivalent of the Waterloo and City line, the Encounters line. Yeah, kind of quite a bit of weight down here in Clapham and Brixton, which I was surprised by. I wasn't surprising so much weight down in Clapham. But yeah, here we go. Obviously, geographically not correct. Heathrow is not that close to London. Same with Uxbridge, same with Amersham. As you can see, this is also the spread of the points, which I just thought was really pretty. I think you might want to see it. This is the geographical plotting of all the maps that I created. Yeah, it follows the shape. There is that vague shape. It's weighted on this side. Obviously South London has been squished up a bit in the map, which was expected anyway, but yeah, observationals it's quite localized to central London, whereas there is occasional outliers outside of the central London area, in that I mean greater London, which kind of isn't shocking. Obviously a majority of stations are set in general London, and it also makes sense that people going on the underground would likely be going into town, for example, so having association space there. Quite a lot more of the data I expected was in South London in contrast to the original map. So 23 out of the 55 South London stations had associations with them, which I think is kind of great. 87 out of 250 was north of the river, which was 38%. Yeah, it's undeniable there is a lack of station in South London. So whether that be for building, marshy ground. The first line that was actually created was the Met line, and the Met line is exclusively in the Northern line, in the north side. And that was because of people coming into the city, into the West End, and that is in north of the river. Also aside from the fact that bombing from World War II, people rebuilding, Also just a lack of population in South London, but it's just meant that generally the infrastructure transportation-wise in South London is abysmal. It's so bad. Anyone who's tried to go from southeast to southwest knows that. I tried to do some more working into it, and this was more of an exploration of the actual shape of the map. This was done on a pen plotter. I got each line individually as an SVG and used Inkscape to plot this in its individual colours. What I really like about this is it comes back to the original thing we were talking about, the map at the start, where it's distinctive. You know what London Underground map is about, and you can recognise it instantly, but a lot of people aren't as familiar in terms of the intricacies. And I have had people look at this when I was coming to do the pen plotter. Someone came in and was like, "Oh, cool, you're printing the map." And I went, "But I'm not. Not really, but kind of." I did want to put text onto this, but I found that I kind of defeat the point, because this isn't going to be used as, this version of it isn't used as a practical map. It's very much just seen as an artistic object, so I didn't need the text in it. Thank you so much for my presentation. I hope you enjoy. If I was to do more next time, I think I would add more in terms of interactive, just different further ways and maps. I think I'd also print them out. I think it's the kind of thing that needs to be displayed. And also I would do some awards for each of them. I wanted to start designing extra underground plaques. For example, Bond Street, Station of Best Friends, the place to be. And yeah, thank you so much.